Brachas, Daf Chav Daled Amud Beis, the first white line. We're like the Nishmas Binyamin David Ben Tzvi. I think I got that right. It's Hashem Shavin Aliyah, very special man. I knew him well. Tremendous tzaddik, one of the nicest people I knew. Always had something nice to say. Anyway, so we're up to the first white line. Tana Rabbanan, or the line before the first white line. Tana Rabbanan, Hoya Yosha Betalisai. Guy sleeping Betalisai. I guess it means he's sleeping under the covers. Doesn't mean he's wearing, he didn't go to sleep in his prayer shawl. It means he's under the covers. He's got a blanket on, a duvet, comforter, whatever you call it. It's too cold for him to take his head out. In other words, he's fully under the covers. Freezing cold. I guess they didn't have good heating in those days for some reason, right? So, what's the din? Can you say Krishma or not? So gemorah says chaytzitz betalisai. The Braysh says chaytzitz betalisai al tzavarai v'kayr Krishma. He covers till his head, or he does a chatzitza on his neck, and then he can say Krishma. Because he can't take his head out, but he can pull the covers down to cover his head is separated from the rest of his body with his comforter, right, with his blanket. He pushes it down like he's covered with a thing. He squishes it against his neck, and then his head is in a separate area than the rest of his body. And some say he doesn't do chatzitza for his head. He does a chatzitza for his heart. In other words, his heart shouldn't see his erva. We don't care if his head sees his erva. The problem is his heart shouldn't see his erva.
The difference between a litvach and a chosim.
But there's the way you put the gartel. If you put the gartel over here or over there. That's why litvachs wear ties, I guess now. And I just realized there's new din. That's why litvachs. That's what you meant.
Yeah.
I never heard that before. Great line. Wow. Okay. So Tanakama, Harry, how does it help covering being chaytis under his head? His heart sees his erva. There's no chatzitza, there's no wall between his heart and his erva. So kasava, this mandama holds liboy is erva muta. That's not a problem. If his heart sees his erva, that's muta. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Yechanan. Rav Huna said in the name of Yechanan. This is a new sugya. A guy's walking in the mavois mutanofais, dirty alleyways, where the garbage, he's walking past the garbage dump, basically. Massive chiddush, says Rav Yechanan, what should he do? Rav Huna says in the name of Rav Yechanan, what should he do? You're walking past the garbage dump, you want to say Krishma, put your hand over your mouth and say, Omle Rav Chisda, a very strong lashon. Rav Chesed HaElokim, it's a shvua by God, in the name of Hashem. It's a shvua. Imam Ali Rav Yechanan B'Pumei, if Rav Yechanan himself would tell me, I wouldn't listen to him. In other words, I don't believe that's what he said. Rav Huna says this in the name of Rav Yechanan. We're going to see there's a bunch of machlokes over here. Rav Huna is always the makel one. He says, I don't believe it. Rav Chesed is chaylik on him and says, I know, even if Rav Yechanan would tell me this, I would not listen to him. Ikid Amri, some say, Amar Rav Bar Bachana, Amar Rav Shua ben Levi. Some say this whole name in the name of Rav Shua ben Levi. In other words, this was said in the name of Rav Shua ben Levi and not in the name of Rav Yechanan. Rav Chisda said, if Rav Shua ben Levi would tell me this, I would never do this. I would not listen to him. So I'm going to ask me, Amar Rav Huna, did Rav Huna really say that you just cover your mouth and you can say Krishma, you're in the bathroom, you're in a disgusting place? Amar Rav Huna said, Tam Chacham, also Lama Bakam at Tenaifis. A Tam Chacham was not even allowed to stand in a Makam Tenaifis by the garbage. Why? Why can't he stand there? If he should eat, it's impossible for Tam Chacham to stand near the garbage without thinking about Torah. And you can't even think about Torah. So they explain, and therefore when you're saying Krishma, you're covering your mouth, you're for sure thinking about Torah. So if you can't stand there, you might think about Torah. When he says Kriya Shema, he's thinking about Torah. So you can't do that. So Gemara says there's a difference. Like kasha. There's no kasha in Rav Huna because kan bo'imit kan b'mahalich. You're not allowed to stand in the garbage because you might think about Torah. But when you're walking past, you're allowed to think about Torah. You're allowed to say Kriya Shema. Why? Because standing is more chomer, we're going to see, than, that's the whole sugya now we're going to see. Standing is much more chomer than walking. When you're walking past, it's not the same thing as standing. Even though they're both learning Torah, one's standing, one's walking, one's mutter, one's also. Umiyamar B'Rechanan, did Reb Chaim really say this din, that you can cover your mouth and you say Kriya Shema? V'amar Rabba Baba Chana, Amar Reb Chaim. We have another member in the name of the same Reb Chaim. That what? Wherever you are, you're allowed to think about Torah. Chutz mi beisav merchatz or beisav kisei. You're not allowed to think about Torah in the bathroom or in the water where you shower. You're not allowed to think about Torah b'chal. Everywhere else you're allowed to think about Torah. So v'chi teima hachinami. So it would appear from here. Also, you can't even be lefi this Reb Chaim. You're in the bathroom. You're not allowed to be mahara in Torah. So how did Reb Chaim say you mahara Torah when you can say Kriya Shema? Cover your mouth, you say Kriya Shema. How can you say that? You're being mahara in Torah. V'chi teima hachinami. You're going to say, you know what, you're right. You can't say one is talking about where you're walking, like we said before. In Rav Huna we said there's a difference if you're walking, if you're standing. When we ask the same question of Reb Chaim, you can't say, here you're walking, here you're standing. Why? Why not? We have a story. Rav Avo was walking behind Reb Chaim. And he's reading Kriya Shema. So he got to the place where the garbage was. So he stopped saying Kriya Shema. When he finished, when they passed by the garbage, he said to Reb Chaim and Rebbe, where should I carry on saying Kriya Shema? Do I have to go back to the beginning? Or is it enough that is it enough that I go from where I was? He said back to him, if you stopped, if you paused for long enough to finish the whole thing, then you go back to the beginning. But if you only stop for a second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds, not enough time to finish Kriya Shema, you carry on. So you hear the kasha? So you see the Reb Chaim. The implication is Reb Chaim said you have to stop when he passes by this garbage. Reb Chaim, we before said, he said, just cover your mouth. And here Reb Chaim is saying to him, go back to it depends whether you could say till the end, but either way, it's mashma from Reb Chaim. He shouldn't be saying Kriya Shema, he should pause. Then the question is where do you go back to? But don't the Etzem saying Kriya Shema in the voice with the face in a disgusting garbage, you don't say Kriya Shema. That's the implication of Reb Chaim. So this is how you can answer. No, it's not kasha. According to me, you can just cover your mouth. Really, there's no kasha b'chal. According to me, you could just cover your mouth. But according to you, you don't want to cover your mouth. You stopped. According to you, if you could have waited till the end, if you waited enough time to finish saying the whole thing, then you got to go back to the beginning. That's what he means. Reb Chaim wasn't passing how he held. He was saying, "Lefi you stopped." This is the shit. This is how you decide if you have to go back to the beginning or not. Just totally side issue. Some people want to bring a raya from here that why would he say Kriya Shema? He gives man Kriya Shema. He's saying Kriya Shema, right? He's not just randomly saying Kriya Shema. And we saw before you have to wear tefillin when you're saying Kriya Shema, right? So with Pashtas, they say that you see from here that you can wear tefillin but mavasam tenafas. You don't have to take off the tefillin. Others say no. Maybe this whole story happened on Shabbos or at night. It was a Kriya Shema Shalayla. Who says it was Kriya Shema Shachris? Okay, interesting raya. Tani Kavas Rav Huna. We have a brisa that upholds the Meimer of Rav Huna. And Tanya Kavasi Rav Chisda, we have another brisa that seems to hold like Rav Chisda. Again, the Machleka says this guy is in a voice with Tanafais. Does he cover his mouth, or Chas v'Shalom? He's got to stop. Shalom Aleichem. What's the brisa? If you're walking by the garbage, don't say Krishma. That sounds like Rav Chisda, right? Don't say Krishma. If you was saying Krishma, and you get to the garbage, basically stop. Like Pasuk Ma, if you didn't stop, what should you do? Amar of mi Asha bar Bereder Yeshub and Levi. If a guy doesn't stop saying Krishma, he's walking through the garbage, he's saying Krishma, he passes by a smelly garbage. What's the din? Yeshub and Levi says, Olav Akasa Vaimer. The Pasuk talks about a guy like this. It says, V'gam anina satlem chukim like Tevim, mushpatim lo yichyu bahem. Hashem Koviyachal says, you know what? Sometimes I gave them mitzvahs, I gave them commandments. It's not good for them. So he told them to say Krishma, and he doesn't avail with it. You know, it's a problem. People think they're doing Ratzon Hashem, they're doing a mitzvah. This guy thinks he's doing a mitzvah. The Torah says, it's chukim lo yitayim, mishpatim lo yichyu. Ravasi Amar, Hay moishchei oven, a different pasuk. Hay moishchei oven b'chavle hashav. People that draw themselves into sin with weak ropes. In other words, the marshal is the ropes is the Yetzer Hara, evil inclination that normally has to pull you in with like a big taiva. Go ahead and steal with massive lust to do something. Also here, what taiva does he have to say Krishma? Just stop. So he pulls him in with this tiny taiva just to carry on what you're saying, like a hergo. Finish the sentence. Let me finish. No, stop. There's no big Yetzer Hara. Rav Adabarava Amma Mahacha, different pasuk. Kidvar Hashem Boza. The word of Hashem he disgraced. In other words, we learn from here, Kidvar, like the speech, to speak in Torah, that's a bizayon. If a person stops, what's a schar? If he stops, it says, for someone who stops, someone who watches his speech, he'll have lengthy days. So it would appear that it's a good thing to do. They ask in other places, I didn't see anyone asking over here, if it's an Aveira to do it, so why is it considered such a thing that you get Arichas Yom if you're careful not to? There's another kasha they speak about, it says, I think Rav Avo said, B'ma rach yomim, in a different gemorah in Tainus, how are you zeicher to such Arichas Yomim? He says, I never was maharer, I never thought about Torah in Muvais with Tunafais. According to this, if it's Asa, why is that such a big schus? If it's Asa, there's a bunch of terutzim. Bunch of terutzim. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I guess maybe someone to say is because sometimes you are. I saw the Ben Ish Chai says this. Sometimes you are. I'll say this because it's maybe negel halacha. He says that sometimes you're allowed to be maharer in makom tunuf. When he says if a person sees an isha and he's going to be maharer, it's better that he thinks about Torah than he thinks about the woman. So there are cases where you're allowed to be maharer. If he's going to think about which is through my being over, if he thinks about this woman or if he doesn't have Vera, so he's allowed to think about it in a Makom Tunuf. So he's saying, I never had to think about Torah in a Makom Tunuf to give myself chizuk. Okay.
But when you're talking about a garbage dump.
Garbage dump, bathroom.
Maybe it's separate.
So the gemorah seems to be saying it's the same thing. No, so the garbage dump is basically it's a bathroom. That's where they threw out that's where they dumped all the garbage. I guess. I hear what you're saying, but okay.
It used to be that they would go to the bathroom, like the public restroom was this like, open pit.
Just a big open garbage dump. Right. Okay, so in the last line going on. Tanya Nami? Sorry. Amarafuna. 2 dots. Amarafuna. Haisat Elisach Hagora Masnov. Muta Likres Krishma. If his talis, if he's got a belt on, he can say Krishma. Take a look in Rashi. What are we talking about here? Bottom Rashi. Ha'isa talisi chagura al masnav lechaseisei masnav lemata. In other words, he's covered from his waist down. He's covered. Alpha pishim masnav lemala hu orum kayakishma. So he's got on. I guess he's got on a whatever it is. He's got like some type of skirt system on. Or he's got a poncho on with a belt from the top, and he takes off the top half. So the belt's holding like some type of pants, a skirt, whatever it is that's going around his waist. He's covered below, but he's not covered on top. That's how Rashi understands it. So even though he's the top part of his body is open, since he's covered on the bottom, he can say Krishma. Others want to say, maybe it just means that there's a hefsek, right? There's a belt. Who says that? Who says it's a problem if his erva, if someone else can see his erva? Some Rishonim want to learn from the pasuk, "Lo yir b'cha erva's davar," then no one's allowed to see your erva. Rashi, that's how Rashi seems to be understanding it. No one's allowed to see his erva, so he has to be wearing pants or a skirt. Others say no, as long as his slave can't see his erva, that's what he saw till now, he's allowed to say Kriyashma, right? So it says the gemorah. So Talisa Chagura al must of Mutalik Kishma. Tanyami Achri, you have a brisa that seems to be saying the same thing. It says, Talisa al Beged, Talisa shall Beged, Vishalav, Vishachsak, Chagura al Masnav, Kar Kishma. If he's got some type of Begedul, he can say Krishma, Aval Tfila, us, it's Achichasas Liboy. So for Krishma, if he's got this belt on, he's wearing a gartel, he's allowed to say Krishma. But the Tfila, if he's not wearing a top, he's wearing a bathing suit with nothing or no shirt on top, his heart has to be covered. I know you're thinking, what's the difference? Krishma is deraisa. If he can say Krishma, how can't he daven? Tefillah is derabanan. So take a look at the top Rashi here. Aval tefillah, Rashi says, tzarachu laharos etzatzmai ka'imid lifnei melech. When you're praying, you have to stand like you're standing before the king. And people don't usually go to the king wearing a bathing suit without wearing a top. The lamed be'ema, you have to stand with fear. When you're saying Krishma, you're not talking to the king. When you're saying Krishma, you're reading his letter. You're reading Torah. You're reading something he's told you to read. It's a declaration. You're making a declaration of Krishma that there's one God. You're not talking to Hashem. You're saying, I believe there's one God. But when you're actually talking to Hashem, there's different standards. You have to cover your whole body. Rav Huna says, Shachach v'nichnas b'tfilin lebeis hakisei. Now the name of Rav Huna. Shachach v'nichnas b'tfilin lebeis hakisei. Some guy forgot. He went to the bathroom with his tefillin. We saw before you're supposed to take off your tefillin. He forgot, or he's in a rush, whatever it was. Shachach. I don't know why he doesn't say it. Nanas. He ran in, he was einus. But he forgot. V'nichnas b'tfilin lebeis hakisei. He goes into the bathroom with his tefillin on. I guess in those days, you're wearing tefillin the whole day. It was more likely that you forget, right? Nowadays, you know you're in shul, so you're wearing tefillin, right? What should you do? Put this, he should cover the tefillin with his hands ad sheyigmar until he finishes in the bathroom. Gemara says ad sheyigmar sakataitach. He's going to sit there now for 20 minutes with his tefillin on. Ela kedamar of Nachman by Yitzchak ad sheyigmar amud rishon. He should wait in the bathroom until he finishes the first shlav, first section of going to the bathroom. Then he should, I guess, wash up, take off the tefillin, and go back to the bathroom. Why? Mishum, the Reb Gamliel, the Tanya Reb Gamliel, we have a separate memra from Reb Gamliel that says, if someone has to go to the bathroom and he pulls it back in, it gives him a droiken, the dragon, I don't know what. Chayli, Rashi says, a mitzvah is hakeres.
The dragon is kidney stones.
Kidney stones? Hadroiken. Hamtzava. A mitzvah is hakeres. I don't know, chaylim, some type of illness that ruins his stomach. Silan achayzer, but if a person needs to urinate and he pulls it back in, maybe it's urokain. Urokain, I guess from what chayli shishim shishmai, some name Rashi says glenitza. I don't know what that is either. Some type of illness. Uroikan sounds like it's from the word green. It makes him go green. Maybe, I don't know. So the Gemara says, It's dangerous. In other words, it's dangerous. That's why he has to run to the bathroom, get out whatever the Amud Rishon should take out, and then go back to the bathroom. Take off the tefillin and then go back to the bathroom. Now there's a shtickle nusugi here. Itma. Tsaya al basarai. This guy, for some reason, has tsaya on his skin. When there's a big machlekes Rishonim, what are we talking about? He has on his skin feces, fecal matter. Or yadai on his hand. Or yadai menachas b'beis hakisi. Or his hand is inside the bathroom. He's out, the hand's inside. Rav Huna Amar Mutta Likreis Krishma, Rav Chisda Amar Asa Likreis Krishma. So Rav Huna says he's allowed to say Krishma if there's fecal matter on his skin. So what's going on over here? We just saw before, and we're going to see later on, you've got to be 4 amos away from Tsaya, right? And even if you can see the Tsaya, you're not allowed to say Krishma. So if it's on his skin, how's it mutter? So Shtikam Machlekes Rishonim, some say, take a look in Rashi. Let's start with Rashi. Rashi says, Yada b'beis hakisei, mechitza yesh beino lebein beis hakisei, posha yalo thim mechitza. So there is a mechitza between him and the beis hakisei, Rashi's saying, but he puts his hand in. So Rashi, the next thing, is going to explain that, well, what could be the case over here? So there's a few options. First option is that it's covered. The tzaya is on his body, but it's covered with his beged, with a kli, and therefore there's no reach. So it's okay. There's no reach. So others say we're talking about the tzaya, that it's dry, and therefore, so if it's very dry, we're going to see in a minute, if it's dry like cheres, like clay, it's going to break. In that case, it's mutter. There's no problem with being near tzaya. Others want to say, the Rambam seems to be saying, we're talking about such a small dot of tzaya that there's no smell to it. There's obviously a smell, but it's totally in what people can smell. People can't smell it. It's a tiny matter, and therefore, there's no problem of reach. I think the Meiri says, we're not talking about it's covered with your body, we're not talking about it's covered with a kli, but it's in a place, it's like under your arm, that's covered with your own body. So there's no problem of reach, there's no problem of seeing it. The problem is it's touching your body. There's a separate issue here. So that's a machlekes. So, Rava is going to explain now the machlekes. My time with Rav Huna. Why did Rav Huna say it's mutter? Dechsiv koile neshama talelka. Our souls praise Hashem. So what's part of the soul? Your mouth, your throat, this part. But not your elbow. That's not where your soul is. Your soul's not in your elbow. So therefore, what praises Hashem? Your voice. That's what has to be kodesh, tahor, pure. Rav Chisda Amar, it says, Asalik Krishma, my time with Rav Chisda Dechsiv, kol etzmaisi termana Hashem ikamoicha. My entire body praises you, Hashem, and therefore the whole body has to be clean. Omar Itmar. Reach ra. Now we're going to get into the heart of the sugya. Reach ra. Sheyesh lo yikah. There's a bad smell that's got an ikah. It means it's got something solid. There's something physical there that's creating a bad smell, meaning there's fecal matter somewhere that's giving off a very bad odor, right? Rav Huna Amar, Marchik Dalad Amas V'Kei Krishma. You have to move away 4 feet, and then you can say Krishma. Rav Chisda Amar Marchik Arba Amas V'Makoim Shepasach Kareach V'Kei Krishma. You have to move 4 feet away from where the smell ends. The Rishonim explain why. Why would you have to be 4 feet away from where the smell ends? Because the smell is itself a problem. The smell is like tzaya. Just like you have to be away 4 feet from the tzaya, you've got to be 4 feet away from the smell. Same thing. The question is, what does Rav Huna mean when he says, Marchik arba amas v'kei krishma? Some want to say, take a look in Rashi, Marchik arba amas, Rashi is a bit of a chiddush here. Marchik arba amas is a few lines above. Rashi says, Marchik arba amas mina ikar, he's got to move 4 feet away from the physical matter. Even though you can still smell, he's 4 feet away, but he smells it. He can say Krishma. So now Rashi is going to say, yeah, but if he can smell it, surely he can see it. He can't see it because it's behind him. So as long as the feces is 4 feet behind him, he can say Krishma. There's no problem with him seeing it. That's how he's learning Rafuna. That you marchik 4 feet from the physical matter, even though you can smell. The Rambam, others want to say no. What it means is he has to be 4 feet away from the tzaya and not smell. But he doesn't have to be 4 feet away from the smell. As long as he's 4 feet away and he can't smell, he's good. In other words, there's 2 separate issues according to Rafuna. One is you got to be 4 feet away from the physical item, and you've also got to not smell. Once you don't smell, you're fine. Rav Chis says you got to be 4 feet away from the smell. The shaila is the smell. If you have to be 4 feet away from the smell, the machlekes achronim, is that the doraisa, is that the rabbanan? In other words, if you have to be 4 feet away, that's a doraisa thing. It says in the pasuk, "Vaya machanecha kodesh." Your machane, your camp should be pure, holy. So anything that's in your feet, we know you're kind of something in 4 amos, right? That's your machane. This is my area. Stay out of my personal area. You've got 4 feet. So if there's soya in your 4 feet, you can't say, you can't pray. It's kodesh. Vaya machanecha kodesh. Your machane is not kodesh. The question is now, he says you got to be 4 feet away from the smell. Is that midoraisa? That the smell is also and if you said Krishma and someone says, it still smells there, you got to pray again, you got to say Krishma again, you got to make Kiddush again. It's very relevant with baby diapers. The guy puts you don't smell anything, he says, there's something there. Even though it's 10 feet away, the garbage is over there, but you can still smell it here. Okay, so Tanya Kvasa Rav Chisda. We have a brisa that seems to imply like Rav Chisda. Again, Rav Chisda said, you got to be 4 feet away from the smell, not from the physical thing. Even from the smell, you've got to distance yourself 4 feet. Tanya Kvasa Rav Chisda. You shouldn't say Krishma, not near human feces, not near dog feces, and not near pig feces. And not chicken stuff. And not near garbage that has a bad smell. I think the Gemara takes out this ashpa. He takes about soya. Okay, but if whatever this is, the chicken feces is above 10 or below 10, then it's okay. And if not, you have to move away till you can't see it anymore. You got to be far enough that you can't see it. And similarly with tefillah, same din. You have to move 4 feet away from where the smell finishes, then you can say Krishma, so we don't pass like this. The Tanya we pass like it says, same thing. Only when can't you say Krishma? Only when they used to put on the leather, on the hide, to make it soft, or I don't know what they did. He put feces on it, and that made it smell very bad. And that's when it's asa. Otherwise, it's mutter. Okay. That's when there's a ikka, that's when there's something physical. What about something where there's nothing physical here? Someone passes gas. Amalahu. I'll tell you what, also chazi hani tzipi de beirav. Take a look at this base of medrash where there's a blanket on the floor. Some people are sleeping, some people are learning. And Rashi explains the people that are sleeping might be passing gas and still people are able to learn. So you're allowed to learn Torah if there's nothing physical there. If there's just smell, there's no problem. V'hani mili b'divrei Torah b'krishma loy. That's only to learn Torah you're allowed, but Krishma you're not allowed to say Krishma if there's a smell. V'divrei Torah nami but the chavrei of the day loy. Divrei Torah it's also for his own smell. Someone else smells muta. What's the difference? Some say it means only b'shas that he's actually making a noise. It's also to learn Torah, that's a bizayin. But afterwards, if there's a bit of smell lingering, it's fine. It's a big machlekes Rashba and Rosh. We're very late, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's very sadistic machlekes over here. We said that there's 2 problems over here, right? According to the Rashba, it says, V'hay machanecha kodesh. Anything within 4 feet, you can't say. You can't say Krishma. So why can you not say Krishma if something's Kumulayinov? Why do you have to be If you can see it, you can't say Kriya Shema. You've got to turn around, it's got to be behind you, it's okay. Even if it's in front of you, you can see, but it's not in your machane. So the Rashba says, because the next pasuk is, L'yir b'chayav es davar. And the L'yir b'chayav es davar, he says it's some type of hekesh, and even if you can see it, it's a problem. Just like you can't see a woman standing in front of you, so you're not allowed to see the tzai, even kum enough. The Rosh says no. We don't make a hekesh to these psukim. It says v'hoi machanecha kadosh. That's the problem. Why can't? So in that case, if you're the Rosh, who cares if it's out of your? Who cares if it's out of your 4 feet? As long as if you can see it, it's not in your machane. So some say that's not called the machane kadosh if you can see it. Others say because the pasuk says we're going to see later, maybe tomorrow, that the Torah says you have to be mechaset. So it's mashma, you have to be mechaset. The people can't see it even. The nafik is going to be halacha l'maisa. If you're in one room and there's another room with a mechitza, there's tzay in that room. The bathroom doors are open, but you're not looking. You close your eyes. You're not looking. Are you allowed to say Kriya Shema? According to Rashba, there's no problem l'chayra. If it's not in your arba amas and you can't see it, you look the other way. It's like Arba. You look the other way. You're fine. According to Rosh l'chayra, you're going to have to say that there's some type of problem that. It's not because the gear b'chayav es davar. There's some type of problem that just by the fact that you can see it, that somehow stirs your machane also. That's not a good machane if you can see it. If you can see it. Others want to say in the Rosh that the Midoraisa it's got to be in your daladamas. Oh, seeing it's only a problem with the Rabbanon. That's why you should be makbid. But Midoraisa, of course, l'chayra, there's nothing wrong with seeing tzayah that's more than daladamas if you're the Rosh. Okay, we're going to have to end here. Have a wonderful day. Shkoyach. Thank you.
Thank God we live in this day.